Now back to Inside Real Estate. Here's Mike the Realtor.
I picked the
There
wrong
better not be two cats in my yard. Folks, welcome back. Inside Real Estate, Sports, Entertainment, Politics. One of the funnest variety shows, weekend variety shows you're ever going to hear. Hey, it's time for our politics segment. Time to get serious now. We've got on the line with us Dick Morris, political expert and author of Armageddon, How Trump Can Beat Hillary. Mr. Morris, are you on the line with us?
Hi, good to be here with you.
Thanks so much for being on the show. Hey, there's a lot of great information in this book, and I really want to heavily get to the trade part of it. But before we get there, let's kind of talk about your concept for the book in general, and why you brought it out, and what your points were you wanted to get across.
Frankly, to advise the Trump campaign and supporters how we can go about defeating Hillary and winning this election. I worked for the Clintons for 20 years,
right.
And you may not know that my father was Donald Trump's lawyer, so I've always so I know a lot about each candidate. And I think that Hillary must not be president. I think that there is so many reasons not. And this book, at least initially, the first half of it, is really a compendium of all of the information about Hillary, much of it not disclosed publicly before, that really explains why she should not be president. The other half of the book explains how to stop her. And the key to that, in my judgment, is to not just use the conservative Republican issues we've been using unsuccessfully for the last two campaigns, but instead to throw what I call the left hook, go after Hillary, to go after the Sanders voters and speak about issues of bank regulation, how immigration and trade policy create income inequality, and really zero in on those voters and speak about school choice and how that deprives African-American, failure to have school choice consigns African-American children to be educated in the schools related to their zip code, and therefore the segregation in housing in effect causes school segregation and lack of quality education. But Hillary is tied to the teachers union and won't support school choice. So I go through a whole series of issues that are, many of which are not conventional Republican issues, and call for Trump to embrace those and to work on them. And so far he's been doing a pretty good job of implementing the game plan that I write out there.
Right. Yeah, I agree. You talk about in the book Hillary fatigue, and I think this hits at the public level and then maybe at the media level as well. But with so many books out there, with so much great information about what Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton as well have been over the last decades. We talk about Benghazi. She could have really seized that opportunity to show how she could handle things in foreign policy, but she squandered that. You talk about how the foundation has just taken in millions and millions of dollars for Haiti and just stolen that from Haiti, basically. And then, of course, her lack of just being generally security-minded with intel. With all of these things and all the additional things that everybody's book that has come out has said, people that vote for Hillary, are they just delusional?
No, I think that the reason a lot of people are voting for Hillary, although I think this race right now is tied, is that I think she's been very successful in demonizing Donald Trump and making him appear to be just beyond the pale. And her campaign against Trump has really been a name-calling campaign, accusing him of being dangerous and unpredictable and homophobic and Islamophobic and racist and sexist and deplorable. And it really seems to me that this is that he can debunk these charges by simply going on television in this debate coming up tomorrow and really showing that he is not those things. in the same way that Ronald Reagan did when Jimmy Carter tried to run a very similar campaign in 1980.
Right. Additionally, in the book, you talked about how Obamacare really is just sort of dying on its own. You know,
Yeah.
a huge portion
we're
of the...
not, we're never going to live to repeal it. It'll die on its own because the insurance companies that are in charge of implementing it and providing the benefits are finding out that the only people that want the coverage are people who are too poor and too sick and end up driving up the premiums for everybody else. And the alternative is not to not cover those folks, but it's to permit others to buy insurance policies that they want. So if you just want catastrophic protection and you don't want to have to pay half your wage to get insurance that covers sex change operations and psychotherapy and addiction counseling and everything else, you just want, if I get hit by a bus, I want to be covered. You should be able to buy that.
Right.
And the key is that to eliminate the requirements that you insure every last disease. And the reason that they have those requirements is because the special interests got together and loaded up the bill with that stuff. And the result is that insurance companies are finding that they cannot provide the coverage the law requires, except at exorbitant premiums or very high deductibles or large federal subsidies that fortunately now are no longer available to them.
Right. And you talk about how a great many are just decide to stay uninsured. They're not going to go on the plan at all. You talk about all the doctors that are pulling out, particularly in California, of the plan. But you talk about, most importantly, that, guess what? Even though it's sort of dying to a degree on its own, should Hillary come into office, she's going to take this to the next level. And
you have to see this as a halfway house, which is what it is. Between, on the one hand, a private system and on the other hand, a total government system. And as it dies, it's going to flip to the left or to the right. And if Trump is elected, he's going to restore a voluntary private system. If Hillary's elected, she's going to absolutely go to a total government system eventually, and it'll be government medicine like it is in Canada and Britain. And the reason that she'll do that is that she can legitimately say, we tried the alternative and it didn't work. And I believe that this is all predicate for a system of total socialized medicine. And I think that Obama and Hillary knew that this jerry-rigged contraption would not work. And the reason they passed it was to provide a halfway house to fully socialized medicine.
Right. The necessary steps to get there down the line.
Right. You mentioned trade. I'm interested in what you're thinking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to talk heavily about that because I think this is really Trump's strong suit. I think it's where he can shine and come out on top. Look, the manufacturing for our country has been the backbone of our country forever. But, it's what got us through World War II, putting together, ships for World War II, planes, etc. And then that's really what won the war. Of course, outside of Fat Man and Little Boy, we were on the ground and in the out on the ground and in the Pacific. That is what built America to make it the superpower that it is. But ever since then, we've been shipping our jobs overseas. And we've been signing trade deals that have been detrimental to us to continue to send those jobs overseas. And Trump comes out and flat out says, you know what, hey, these are bad deals. And also, guess what? China, you know what they're doing? They're devaluing their currency. They're manipulating. You talk a great deal about that in the book and expand on that.
Yep. Well, the facts are clear. Before NAFTA was signed and ratified in the last year before it in 1993, the United States had a positive balance of trade with Mexico of $1.3 billion. Now we have a negative balance of trade with Mexico of $63 billion. But the year before China was admitted to the World Trade Organization in 1993 also, we had a $50 billion negative balance of trade with China. Now we have a $500 billion negative balance. And it's clear that these trade deals have absolutely created a system of where jobs leave the country. But there's a more important point behind that. These trade deals force the American worker to be compensated on a third world level because they create a global wage scale. And it's not just a matter of wages within the United States. It's a matter of wages around the world. And our workers have to compete with workers from China and South Korea and Singapore, and ultimately from Vietnam and Thailand and the world's least developed countries, exporting countries. And it really is the reason we have, one of the big reasons, immigration is the other, that we have such vast income inequality in the United States. It's not the lack of a minimum wage. Minimum wage is sort of the safety net. The reason is that we have to compete with immigrants that are willing to work for almost nothing, and that we have to compete with Asian workers who are willing to work for almost nothing. And what Trump is really saying is, I know that the classical economic theory is free trade. I know that the globalists want to eliminate national barriers and have one global economy. But that's not what America needs, and it's not what America wants. And I'm going to be president of America, not president of the world. And I'm going to act in the interests of the American people. And the reason that the elitists who concluded and support these trade deals support them is that they are very good for them because they make their money from investments keyed to the global economy. And it's a very good policy to do that stuff. Absolutely. But in the meantime, it leaves the American worker totally bereft. And as we enter the era of greater and greater automation, this becomes more and more important. But let me also make one other point. Coming in right behind the TPP, the Pacific Partnership Trade Deal, is something far more dangerous. The TISA, which Hillary also had helped to negotiate, the Trade and Services Agreement. Because as you pointed out, we're losing our manufacturing base. But manufacturing now is down to only about 25 or 30% of our economy. 70% of it is services. And the Trade and Services Agreement permits foreign companies to import service workers into the United States without immigration restrictions. So, for example, Sheridan could bring all of its employees from Lima, Peru, and move them to Dallas and staff its hotels with them. And the result is that it's a bypass to immigration laws under the rubric of free flow of labor, which is just what they have in Europe, which is how all the Muslims get to Britain and get to France and get to Belgium, as well as lots and lots of Eastern Europeans. And the result is to spread unemployment all over Europe, and this would spread it all over the United States. So his opposition to the TISA, Trade and Services Agreement, that's an acronym we're all going to learn soon, is, I think, also crucial.
I think so, too, and I think that is even – you're right. It's 100% more detrimental at this point because we've already lost all of our manufacturing. The next thing is the service side. And you hit TISA really good in the book, and I'm glad you went straight to it right after that.
I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And,
TISA.
But and one other thing, and we're at like 30 seconds, maybe a minute or so. You mentioned this in the book, and I thought this was perfect. I'm glad you had it in the book. You talked about Carrier HVAC, and they were planning to move 1,400 jobs to Mexico, which is going to save them $81 million a year. Hey, that's great. Save $81 million a year. But, hey, thanks for taking all the jobs somewhere else. But Trump said, hey, you know what? You think – he said this is what he would do. He said, hey, you think you're going to take all those jobs down there and then send those products back across without a tax? Hey, I think we're going to tax you. We're going to make it so that it'd be the same for you to just produce those products here in the States, and I liked that.
Well, that's one of the things you could do. You could certainly do that. The other thing you could do is you could say, you guys want any defense contracts? Sorry. You guys want any involvement with any other government work? Sorry. And our ability to retaliate and to force these companies to pay American workers a decent wage and keep their jobs in the United States is enormous, and we just don't use it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
In fact, we're legally barred from using it under NAFTA, which is why you have to renegotiate the thing.
Well, this has been a great segment with Dick Morris, author of Armageddon, How Trump Can Beat Hillary, and, of course, the political expert Dick Morris. Dick Morris, thank you so much.
It is a relief. I've done maybe 250 interviews about this book. I would say that in about 20 of them, the host has read the book, and you are one of those, and I really congratulate you and appreciate it.
Well, thank you, and thank you for putting out the book and putting out so much great information. And yes, I absolutely read every book of all the guests that come on from cover to cover, because I think I owe it to not only myself but to the author as well as the people out there that we're discussing this, and we know what we're talking about.
That's
and
great.
Thank you for mentioning that, and I hope we can talk more, because I got so much more I'd love to talk to you about.
Good. Well, I'd love to too. You take care.
All right, thank you. All right.
Bye-bye.
Folks, it's The Inside with Mike Kruizinga. We'll see you next week, 8 to 9, Sunday mornings, right here. Sunday mornings, right here. Sunday mornings, right here. Sunday mornings, right here. Sunday mornings, right here.